Something just shifted and you felt it. Not outside, not in the noise of the world. Inside you, quiet, sudden, undeniable. You can't explain it, but you know this much. After what you just did, things will never be the same again. Because most people hesitate. Most people ignore the inner call. But you didn't. And that one decision, that one moment of alignment, just changed everything. The moment you chose differently. There was a time when you would have stayed silent. A time when you would have ignored that inner voice. A time when fear would have controlled your next move. But not this time. This time, something inside you refused to stay quiet. You made a choice that didn't make sense to everyone else. But deep down, it made perfect sense to your soul. And that's the moment everything began to shift. Why this moment matters more than you think. To the outside world, it may look small, insignificant, even invisible. But spiritually, it was massive. Because real transformation never announces itself loudly. It happens in silent decisions, in unseen resistance, in private battles no one else knows about. And you just won one of those battles. You didn't just act, you aligned. There's a difference between reacting and aligning. Most people react based on fear, pressure, and expectations. But what you did came from somewhere deeper. It came from awareness. You paused, you felt, you chose. And in that moment, you aligned with something higher. That's not normal. That's rare. The path of the chosen is never easy. If you've always felt different, there's a reason. If you've always questioned things others blindly follow, there's a reason. You weren't meant to move with the crowd. You were meant to see what others ignore. And that comes with a cost. Isolation, confusion, doubt. But also clarity, purpose, awakening. Why people misunderstand you. When you begin to change, people get uncomfortable. Not because you're wrong, but because your growth exposes their stagnation. They may call you different. They may say you've changed. And they're right, because you're not the same person anymore. The silent resistance you've been facing. Have you noticed how things feel harder sometimes? How certain situations test your patience more than usual? That's not random. That's resistance. Every time you move closer to your purpose, something tries to pull you back. But this time, you didn't fall for it. You broke a pattern. What you did wasn't just a decision. It was a disruption. You broke a cycle that may have followed you for years, maybe even your whole life. And breaking patterns isn't easy. It requires awareness, courage, strength. And you showed all three. The shift you're feeling right now, that strange feeling inside you, that mix of calm and intensity, that's alignment. It's the feeling of stepping into something real, something deeper than surface level living. You're not imagining it. You're experiencing it. Why your life won't go back to the same. Once you see clearly, you can't unsee. Once you awaken, you can't go back to sleep. And that's where you are right now. You've crossed a line most people never reach. A point of no return. And from here, everything changes. The loneliness of awakening. Let's be honest. This journey can feel isolating. You start to outgrow conversations, outgrow environments, outgrow versions of yourself. And not everyone will understand that. But that doesn't mean you're alone. It means you're evolving. Why you were tested before this moment. Think about everything you've been through. The confusion, the setbacks, the emotional battles. None of it was random. You were being prepared, strengthened, refined, because this moment required a stronger version of you. You trusted yourself, and that's powerful. The world teaches you to doubt yourself, to seek validation from others. But you didn't do that. You trusted your inner voice, even when it was uncomfortable. And that kind of trust changes everything. You stepped out of fear. Fear is the biggest prison. It keeps people stuck in cycles they hate. But you stepped out of it, even if just for a moment. You broke free, and that moment is enough to start a transformation. The energy around you is shifting. You may not see it yet, but things are moving. Opportunities, connection, realizations, all beginning to align with the version of you that made that decision, because energy responds to action. Why this is only the beginning. Don't think this was the peak. This was the doorway. What you did opened something that was waiting for you. And now that it's open, you're going to start seeing things differently. You're becoming more aware. Little things are starting to stand out. Patterns, behaviors, intentions. You're seeing beyond the surface. That's not overthinking. That's awareness. And awareness is power. Why you can't shrink anymore. Before, you may have tried to fit in, to stay quiet, to not stand out. But that version of you is fatting. You're realizing that shrinking yourself was never the solution. And now you're expanding. The truth about being chosen. Being chosen isn't about being better than others. It's about being responsible for your awareness. It means you see more, feel more, understand more. And that comes with responsibility. You can't ignore what you know anymore. You're being guided, not controlled. This journey isn't about losing control. It's about gaining clarity. You're not being forced. You're being guided. And every choice you make either aligns you or distracts you. Why people may try to pull you back. Not everyone will celebrate your growth. Some will resist it because your evolution challenges their comfort. They may try to bring you back to who you were, but you can't go back. And deep down, you know that. You're stepping into your real identity. For so long, you may have felt unsure of who you are, confused, disconnected. But now, things are becoming clearer. Not all at once, but piece by piece. And it all started with that one decision. The importance of staying aware. This path requires awareness, constant awareness, because distractions will come, doubts will return, but now you know better, and knowing changes how you respond. You're not imagining your growth. Sometimes you question yourself, wonder if you're overthinking, but you're not. You're growing, and growth feels unfamiliar at first. That's why it feels uncomfortable. The strength you didn't know you had. Look at what you just did. That wasn't easy. That required strength you didn't even realize you had. And now that you've seen it, you can't deny it anymore. Why this moment will define you. Years from now, you'll look back at this and realize this was the turning point. Not because of what happened around you, but because of what changed within you. You're no longer asleep. You're aware now, and awareness changes everything. You notice more, feel more, understand more. And that's something most people never experience. The responsibility of your awakening. With awareness comes responsibility. You can't pretend anymore. You can't go back to ignorance. You have to move forward, even when it's uncomfortable. You're closer than you think. It may not feel like it, but you're closer than ever. Closer to clarity, closer to purpose. And it all started with that one moment. This is your confirmation. If you've been questioning yourself, this is your sign. You didn't imagine it. You didn't overreact. You made the right move. And now you're seeing the shift. Everything is unfolding for a reason. Even the confusion, even the delays. It's all part of the process. Because real transformation doesn't happen instantly. It unfolds step by step. You are not the same person anymore. And that's a good thing, because the old version of you wouldn't have made that decision. But this version did. And that changes everything. If this message resonated with you, it's not by accident. There's a reason you're here, a reason you felt this. Now don't ignore it. Don't go back to sleep. Step fully into who you're becoming. Like this video if you felt this shift. Comment "I've changed" if you know this message was for you. And subscribe to Return to Awakening, because this is only the beginning of what you're about to discover. The moment you stopped seeking approval, there was a silent shift when you no longer needed validation. You didn't announce it, you didn't explain it. You just stopped. Stopped looking for permission. Stopped waiting for someone to agree with you. And in that quiet decision, you took your power back. Why your silence is becoming louder. You may not be saying much these days. You may have pulled back from unnecessary conversations. But your silence is not weakness. It's awareness. It's observation. And somehow people can feel it. They sense that something about you has changed. The inner voice is getting stronger. That voice inside you, it's different now. Clearer, sharper, harder to ignore. Before it was easy to dismiss, easy to doubt. But now it speaks with authority. And every time you listen to it, your path becomes more defined. Why distractions are losing their grip. Things that once entertained you don't feel the same anymore. Conversations feel shallow. Environments feel heavy. It's not that the world changed. You did. Your energy no longer matches what used to hold your attention. You're starting to see through illusions. The things people chase, the things they fight over, they're starting to look different to you. You see the patterns, the repetition, and deep down you know there's more to life than this surface-level existence. The weight of awareness. Awakening isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it's heavy, because you begin to notice everything. Energy, intentions, hidden motives. And that awareness can feel overwhelming. But it's also what protects you. It's what guides you. Why you feel pulled in a new direction. There's a quiet pull inside you. Subtle but persistent. It's leading you somewhere different. You can't fully explain it, but you feel it. And the more you ignore it, the louder it becomes. You're no longer reacting the same way. Situations that once triggered you don't have the same effect anymore. You pause more, think deeper. You respond instead of react. And that shift alone separates you from who you used to be. The people around you are noticing. They may not say it directly, but they feel it. Your energy has changed. You're not as easy to influence, not as easy to read. And that makes some people uncomfortable, because they can't control what they don't understand. Why you're being more selective. You're starting to protect your energy, your time, your focus, not out of ego, but out of awareness. You realize not everything deserves your attention. And that realization is changing how you move through life. The shift from external to internal. You're no longer searching outside for what you've started to find within. Answers, clarity, direction. It's all becoming internal. And that's where real power begins. Because once it's internal, No one can take it from you. You're becoming harder to manipulate. Before, people could influence your emotions, your decisions, your direction. But now there's resistance, not in a defensive way, but in an aware way. You see things for what they are, and that changes everything. Why your patience is being tested. Right after a breakthrough comes a test, not to punish you, but to strengthen you, to see if you've truly changed. And lately, you've been handling things differently. You're building emotional discipline. You don't react instantly anymore. You don't let emotions control your every move. You feel, but you don't lose control. And that balance is something most people never master. But you're learning it. The difference between loneliness and solitude. There's a difference you're starting to understand. Loneliness feels empty. Solitude feels intentional. And what you're experiencing now is solitude. You're not alone. You're just choosing peace over noise. Why your old habits feel uncomfortable now. Things you used to do without thinking now feel off, misaligned. It's like your system rejects what no longer serves you. And that's growth, because you can't evolve while holding onto old patterns. You're attracting different energy. Pay attention to who and what is entering your life. New conversations, new perspectives, even new challenges. They're not random. They're matching the version of you that made that decision. The awareness of time is hitting you. You're starting to value your time differently. Wasting it feels uncomfortable now. Misusing it feels wrong. Because you're realizing how important every moment is. And that awareness is pushing you forward. Why you're questioning everything. Belief systems, expectations. You're not accepting things blindly anymore. You're asking deeper questions. And that's not rebellion. That's awakening. Because truth requires questioning. You're becoming more intentional. Your actions are no longer random. You think before you move. You feel before you decide. There's intention behind your steps now. And that level of awareness is rare. The calm confidence building inside you. It's not loud. It's not aggressive. But it's there. A quiet confidence. A deep knowing that you're on the right path, even if you don't have all the answers yet. Why you don't feel the need to explain yourself. You're realizing you don't owe everyone an explanation. Not everyone will understand your journey. And that's okay, because this path was never meant to be understood by everyone. You're stepping into a new version of yourself. This isn't a small change. This is a transformation. Layer by layer, you're becoming someone new, someone more aware, more grounded, more aligned with truth. And it all traces back to that one moment, that one decision, that one shift that changed everything. The moment you stopped forcing things. You used to chase outcomes, try to control every situation. But something in you let go, not out of defeat, but out of understanding. You realized what's meant for you doesn't need to be forced. And that release created space for something real. Why things are falling away so quickly. You may have noticed it. People, habits, situations disappearing. At first it feels sudden, almost confusing. But look closer. These things were never stable. They were just familiar. And now that you've changed, they can no longer stay. You're no longer chasing, you're attracting. Before, you were running after everything. trying to make things happen. Now things are coming to you. Not all at once, not perfectly, but differently, because your energy has shifted from lack to alignment, the discomfort of becoming. Growth isn't smooth. It's not always peaceful. Sometimes it feels like everything inside you is being rearranged. Old thoughts clashing with new awareness. Old habits resisting new discipline. But that discomfort is transformation in progress. Why you're noticing people's true intentions. It's getting harder for people to hide things from you. Not because they've changed, but because you see clearer now. Energy doesn't lie, and your awareness is picking up on things you used to overlook. That's not judgment. That's clarity. You're becoming more detached. Not cold, not distant. Just detached. You no longer cling to outcomes, or people, or expectations. You appreciate, but you don't depend. And that level of detachment creates emotional freedom. The shift in your reactions is everything. Someone says something, and you don't respond the same way anymore. Something goes wrong, and you don't panic like before. That's not coincidence. That's growth becoming visible in your everyday life. While you're trusting timing more, you're starting to understand that everything has a time. Not your time, not their time, the right time. And instead of rushing, you're allowing things to unfold. That patience is changing your entire experience. You're no longer afraid of being misunderstood. People may not get you, may misinterpret your silence, but it doesn't shake you like before, because you're not living to be understood anymore. You're living to be aligned. The clarity after emotional storms. You've been through intense emotions recently. Confusion, frustration, moments where nothing made sense. But now there's clarity, because every emotional storm was clearing something out. And what remains is truth. Why you feel more grounded, even when things feel uncertain. There's a sense of stability inside you. You're not easily shaken anymore, because your foundation is no longer external. It's internal, and that makes all the difference. You're learning the power of restraint. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every emotion needs to be expressed instantly. You're learning to hold back, to observe first, and that restraint is giving you control over your energy. The shift from proving to being. You don't feel the need to prove yourself anymore. Not your worth, not your growth. You just are. And that presence speaks louder than any explanation ever could. Why your intuition feels sharper. It's not random guesses anymore. It's knowing, a quiet certainty that guides your decisions. You feel when something is right. You feel when something is off. And that sensitivity is becoming one of your greatest strengths. You're breaking invisible chains. There were limits placed on you that you didn't even realize. Beliefs, fears, expectations. And now, one by one, you're breaking them. Not loudly, but intentionally. The realization that changed your perspective. You're starting to see life differently. Not as something happening to you, but something happening for your growth. That shift in perspective changes how you handle everything. Challenges don't feel like punishment anymore. They feel like preparation. Why you're no longer rushing decisions. You've slowed down, not because you're lost, but because you're aware. You take your time. You think deeper. And that patience is protecting you from unnecessary mistakes. You're becoming comfortable with the unknown. Before, uncertainty created anxiety. Now it creates curiosity. You don't need to have everything figured out. You trust that clarity will come when it's supposed to. And that trust is giving you peace. The shift in how you see yourself. You're not the same person you used to believe you were. You're seeing your strength, your awareness, your ability to grow. And that self-recognition is powerful. Why you're letting go without resistance. Things leave, and you don't chase them anymore. People distance themselves, and you don't force them to stay. Because you understand something now. What's meant to stay will, and what's not never belonged. You're stepping out of old identities. Roles you used to play don't fit anymore. Versions of yourself feel unfamiliar now. And that's not loss. That's evolution. The quiet transformation no one sees. From the outside, it may not look like much has changed, but inside everything has. Your thoughts, your reactions, your awareness, and that internal shift is what truly matters. Why you're protecting your peace more. You're becoming selective with what you allow into your space. Not everything deserves your attention. Not everything deserves your energy. And choosing peace is becoming a priority. You're realizing your worth without validation. No applause, no recognition, and yet you still know your value. That's different because now your worth is not dependent on others. It's understood internally. The deeper connection with yourself. You're spending more time in your own thoughts, reflecting, understanding, not escaping, but connecting. And that connection is strengthening your sense of self. Why everything feels more intentional now. Nothing feels random anymore. Every decision, every interaction feels like it has meaning because you're no longer moving unconsciously. You're moving with awareness. And that awareness started with that one moment, that one choice, that changed everything. The moment you stopped ignoring the signs. They were always there. Subtle, repeating, easy to dismiss. But this time, you paid attention. You didn't brush it off. You didn't call it coincidence. You felt it and you followed it. And that decision deepened your awareness instantly. Why repetition is no longer accidental. You're noticing patterns now. The same lessons, the same types of people, showing up in different forms. But now you see it. You understand that repetition is not punishment. It's a message waiting to be understood. You're no longer emotionally available for everything. Before, everything affected you. Every word, every action. Now there's distance. Not because you don't care, but because you've learned. Not everything deserves your emotional energy. And that shift is protecting your peace. The awareness of your triggers. You're starting to recognize what used to control you. The things that made you react instantly. The situations that pulled you off balance. But now there's a pause. A moment of awareness. Before reaction. And in that pause, you take your power back. Why your environment feels different. Same places, same surroundings, but something feels off. Or maybe clearer. Because you're not the same anymore. And when you change internally, your perception of everything changes too. You're no longer trying to fix everyone. There was a time you felt responsible for others. their emotions, their choices, their problems. But now you've stepped back. You understand something deeper. Everyone has their own path, their own lessons, and it's not your job to carry what isn't yours. The strength in walking away. You've started to walk away from things that don't feel right, without drama, without explanation, just quiet distance. And that kind of strength comes from knowing your worth, why your energy feels more contained. You're not as open as before. Not everyone has access to you now. You've created boundaries, not walls, but filters. And those filters are protecting your growth. You're beginning to trust your discomfort, that uneasy feeling inside you. You used to ignore it, push it aside, but now you listen, because you've realized discomfort is often a signal, guiding you, warning you, redirecting you. The shift from chaos to clarity. Things used to feel overwhelming. Too many thoughts, too many emotions. But now there's space, moments of clarity, where everything just makes sense. And those moments are becoming more frequent. Why you're no longer afraid of change. Change used to feel threatening, uncertain, unstable. Now it feels necessary, even when it's uncomfortable, because you understand that growth requires movement. You're seeing the truth in people's actions. Words don't hold the same weight anymore. You're watching actions, patterns, consistency, because actions reveal truth in a way words never can. And that awareness is sharpening your judgment, the quiet confidence in your decisions. You don't second guess yourself as much. Once you decide, you stand by it, even if others don't agree, because your decisions now come from awareness, not impulse. Why you feel less need to rush connections. You're not trying to connect with everyone anymore. You're okay with fewer, but real connections. Depth over quantity, because you've realized not everyone is meant to understand you. And that's okay. You're becoming more self-reliant. You don't depend on others the way you used to. Emotionally, mentally, you've built a connection with yourself. And that independence is making you stronger. The shift in how you handle setbacks. Things still go wrong, but you don't collapse like before. You adjust. You learn. You move forward with more awareness than before. And that resilience is growth in action. Why silence is becoming your power. You don't feel the need to respond to everything, to explain, to defend. Sometimes silence says enough, and you've started to understand the strength in holding your peace. You're no longer chasing closure. Not every situation will give you answers. Not every ending will make sense. And you've accepted that. You've stopped chasing closure from places that can't provide it. The deeper understanding of your journey. You're starting to see your life as a process, not a problem. Everything you've been through has shaped your awareness. Even the pain, even the confusion, it all had a purpose. Why you feel more in control, not of everything around you, but of yourself, your thoughts, your reactions, your choices. And that internal control is more powerful than external control ever was. You're learning to sit with yourself. No distractions, no noise, just you. And instead of discomfort, there's understanding. You're getting to know yourself on a deeper level. The awareness of what truly matters. Things that once felt important don't feel the same anymore. Priorities are shifting. You're focusing on what's real, what's meaningful, and letting go of what's not. While your standards are rising, you're expecting more now, from yourself, from others, not in an unrealistic way, but in an aligned way. You're no longer settling for what drains you. You're recognizing your own patterns, not just others, yourself, your habits, your tendencies, and instead of ignoring them, you're working through them. That level of self-awareness is rare, the shift from external noise to inner clarity. The world is still loud, still chaotic, but inside, there's growing clarity, a sense of direction that doesn't rely on outside opinions. While you're becoming more disciplined, you're holding yourself accountable, even when it's hard, even when no one is watching, because you understand that discipline creates freedom, and that understanding is shaping your actions. You're stepping into quiet power, not loud, not attention-seeking, just powerful, in your presence, in your awareness, in the way you move. And that quiet power is something people feel, even if they can't explain it. All of this, every shift, every realization, every change, traces back to that one moment when you chose differently and changed everything.